Okay, so I am recording one of these for every team in the league. And this episode is about the Buffalo Bills draft card on NFLDraftFanatics.com. So, what I'm going to do is show you how the site is set up, show you how the algorithm works, and if you want to manipulate a team's draft card, how to do it quickly. So, if you come in and you do a mock draft, and there's this thing here called the first round challenge. So I'll toggle that on and I will pick Buffalo. And there's a couple of position groups I want to work on, one of which is defensive back, one of which is running back. So a first round challenge is 5 consecutive unique first rounds. Okay. So if you know the defensive backs that you think have a first round grade, so Tyrion Arnold probably has a first round grade, so I'm going to grab him in the first round challenge. He was already 9th on the draft card. This should move him up higher than 9. Wiggins is definitely a first round grade. So my focus on this first round challenge is the DBs. So if we look here, King and Lassiter are probably second round grades. The fact that King is 9th, the algorithm looks at the top 8. So he's not being considered in the first round, even though he's 9th overall on the draft card, right? Now, DeJean is definitely a first round grade, so I am going to pick him in the first round challenge. At this point, I have done 3 of the 5 iterations of the first round challenge. Kool-Aid McKinstry is definitely a first round grade. So when available in a first round challenge, I'm grabbing him. He should actually be the number 1 corner on Buffalo's draft card. Okay. So at this point, you can see across the top, I've taken Arnold, Wiggins, DeJean, McKinstry. Okay. There might be one other corner that's taken in the first round. But at this point, if I look, I believe, let me check something here. I've got something up in my other monitor. Kitchens would be another. So let's go to safety. Kitchens is 60th, so I'm going to pick him. Notice he's 60th right now. Okay. So I just moved all those DBs up. And if you want to know like what is the significance of what you just did, at any time you can go to the team needs on NFL Draft Fanatics, find the team that you're looking for, so in this case Buffalo, and look at the player list. Okay? And this is showing you Buffalo's player list. So Wiggins is 2, DeJean is 3, McKinstry moved up to 5, Arnold moved up to 6. Kitchens, he was 60th. He just moved up to 8th. Okay. So the purpose of our first round challenge is to get those players towards the top. And how many times do I have to pick Kitchens before he overtakes Neighbors? Have fun with the simulator. That's kind of the point. There is an algorithm. I could give you a math problem, but the goal is not to be good at math. The goal is to have fun doing mock drafts. So just observe that Kitchens at this point has entered into the top 8 when he was 60th. Okay, so let's go back and now let's do another way to set up Buffalo's draft card. So I just did a single first round challenge. The purpose of that first round challenge was to make sure that the DBs were at the proper spot. So now we're going to do a second round challenge, and we're probably going to do 2 of these. So we need to do a second round challenge, and we want to focus on running backs, and we want to focus on linebackers, just to make sure that the players that are of value in the draft are at the right spot at Buffalo's draft card. I am not suggesting to draft a linebacker in round 1. I am not suggesting to draft a linebacker in round 2. But there are linebackers, for example, that have a first round grade. and we want to take that into account in Buffalo's draft card. So we're going to do a second round challenge, which is 10 unique second rounds. Okay, so I'm going to start the second round challenge. The first round challenge, you could do it however you want. When a player is there in round 2, it will be the only time I can take him. And Buffalo has 1 second round pick. So in this case, I have to have 10 unique players. And I could actually be drafting 20, right? 10 unique first round, 10 unique second. It is not a requirement that the first round is unique when you do a second round challenge. But in this case, I am working on the linebackers. So the first thing I'm going to do is look for Trotter. So I doubt Trotter is there in round 2. So I am going to take him and say he is a possible first round pick. I like him better in round 2, but I wanted to take him. He was 22 on the draft card, and that's going to move him up. Now you can see a couple of running backs here. And defensive line in the second round is going to be good value. So if I look here at defensive line, Dorless and Landon Jackson are 2 to pay attention to. So Jackson is 97. I'm going to draft him in round 2. Okay. So again, we just did 2 rounds, right? So you can see if we scroll to the top, I did Trotter, Jackson. Okay. So let's look here. So DeJean is at the top. I would have McKinstry higher than DeJean. So I'm definitely going to pick McKinstry. He is 5. DeJean is 4. I do not know if what I just did is enough to flip those 2 on the draft card. Okay. If Stutzman as a linebacker is there in round 2, that's a steal. Okay. He likely will have a first round grade. So that was why I took him there. Okay. So going back, you can see I took McKinstry, and McKinstry has already gone in this, so we can't see where he is on Buffalo's card. Okay. I like, out of these players here, I would say Buffalo would take O'Dunes over DeJean, given the 2 players and where the roster is. So I'm picking player 7 over player 5. So we're going to see if O'Dunes possibly moves higher than 7 on the draft card. Second round, I want to focus on the linebackers. So I am going to filter on linebackers. Mondin in round 2 would be incredible. So again, that's probably not where Buffalo's going to go, but if he's there in round 2, I believe that you grab him. Okay. So if you look here, Wiggins is 1, Arnold is 2, or excuse me, Wiggins is 1, Arnold is Wiggins is 1, Arnold is 7th on the draft card. I think I like Neighbors more than Wiggins for Buffalo, but which of these 2 players makes the team better? That's a good debate. So I am going to go Neighbors here, and then I'm going to go back in the second round challenge, and I'm going to go pick another linebacker. Okay, so if you look, there's no linebackers that are appearing in the top 10. So the linebackers that we would be focused on in rounds 1 and 2, Jamin Dumas-Johnson is probably going to be going. He should not be 139th on the draft card. So I'm going to pick him here. Okay, and now we're back to round 1. So I believe last time I picked Neighbors. Neighbors did not go higher than Wiggins. Okay, so this time, and I've already picked O'Dunes ones. So all 3 of those guys in the second round challenge, I've picked at least once before. But in this case, which of these two players would I like better? I like Olu. So he's number 12 overall in the draft card. I'm going to pick him. If he falls to Buffalo, that would be an incredible pick. Okay. And again, I'm working on linebackers. So I want to look at this specific list. Liafu is one. Bethune is another. So I'm going to take Bethune's 257 and draft him. Okay, now we're back to round one. Okay, so you can see the two wide receivers are at the top of Buffalo's draft card, 3 and 5th overall. Would we go DeJean, Arnold, Kitchens? I like the fact that those three guys are there, but here's a couple of other things. Like I'm looking here, Joe Alt would be a player that if he falls to Buffalo, that would be an incredible pick, as would a couple of the other players that are further down. I wouldn't take Benson in round one, but Wilson, Latham, even Igbuka in round one, Chop Robinson in round one, Latu in round one. Okay, so let's take a look here. The algorithm focuses on the top 8. Kalen King is probably a second-round pick. So I want to take somebody under King and move him higher. And Latu is probably going in the top half of round one. So I am going to take Latu as the first-round pick. He was 31st overall in the draft card. My goal by picking him in the first round is to move him up a little bit. Okay. Second round, I'm working on my linebackers. So I'm probably taking the Notre Dame linebacker. I'm checking the back of the draft card. So in this case, I'm taking LeFou, and he's probably somewhere between a second round and a third round grade. Okay. So the purpose of it, keeping in mind, I'm in a second round challenge. The purpose of this is to try to seed your second round, and or if the player drops to round 3, you want them high enough on the draft card. Okay. So I don't like Trotter in round 1. So I definitely want to pick a player here that is below Trotter. Latham would be a good pick for Buffalo in round 1. Dallas Turner would be an excellent pick in round 1. So would Chop Robinson. So I am going to take Dallas Turner, who is 30th on the draft card. In this case, now we're Buffalo's second round pick. So a couple of observations. There's a good chance that this player goes in round 1. There's a good chance that this player goes in round 1, and Buffalo needs a defensive tackle. So the top 4 on that card for Buffalo to me look great. And I'll even say Lassiter has a second round grade. So I would even say the top 5 for this second round pick, this draft card looks like somebody has drafted for Buffalo on NFL Draft Fanatics before. Okay, so I am still working on linebackers, so I want to confirm which players. Amondon, Stutzman, Bethune, we've all taken. Trotter, we've taken. So I do want to move Jacobs up. I don't think he's going on day 2. I think in the 4th round, he would be a good pick for Buffalo. But 140 in the 4th round, I want him higher. So I am going to pick Jacobs there. The linebacker coach that coached Terrell Bernard is now coaching Penn State. So there's a reason that I just picked Jacobs there. And a special shout out to Dean Kindig for pointing that out. Okay, so again, let's examine the top of the Bills draft card. Wiggins looks good. O'Duns looks good. Dallas Turner, who I just picked, right? My last first round pick was Dallas Turner. He is now in the top 7 of Buffalo's draft card. There's DeJean, Latou, who I picked earlier, Arnold, which I picked earlier. Now, you're saying, would you go Arnold or Latou? Which one would you do? So we're at iteration 8 of the first round challenge. We have to do 10 of these. Okay. So if I pick Latou, there's a pretty good chance he's going to go higher than DeJean. But I want to look below and just work on the card, draft card a little bit. That's part of what the second round challenge is. So I like Worthy as in the top 8. So the algorithm for NFL Draft Fanatics is that if a player is in the top 8, when another user is simulating for their team, it's going to pick one of the top 8 players for Buffalo in the other user's simulation. I like Worthy in round 2 or in round 1 to Buffalo. King at 9 is a second round pick. Now, Verse is definitely a first round pick. So if he's there for Buffalo in round 1, I'd really like Jared Verse. So he's 32 on the draft card right now. I am going to take him. And at this point, unless like Jeremiah Trotter is sitting there, I have picked all the linebackers that I'm interested in. You can see that Colson might be another linebacker. Buffalo has scouted Michigan a lot, but I like Colson at 125. I don't think I'm picking another linebacker. I think all the linebackers that Buffalo needs have been moved up on the draft card. So at this point, I have if this is round 2 and Kitchens is there, Buffalo could take him in round 1. So him being there in round 2 and he's sitting at the top of the draft card, that's a good pick for a second round challenge. Okay. We're basically trying to confirm that the draft card is set up effectively. Notice Verse, I think he was 30 something before. He has already moved up to 6th. So that one first round pick got him to move up the draft card a little bit. We can see Trotter at 10. I don't like Trotter in round 1 to Buffalo. So I definitely want to pick somebody that's below Trotter to try to get them to be higher than 10. So in this case, I like Worthy. I know Bills Mafia will be screaming for a wide receiver. So I will pick Worthy without even looking at the second page to see who else I can move up. Okay, now we're in round 2. Now, Brian Thomas in round 2 would be awesome, but I've already picked a wide receiver this time. So while back-to-back wide receivers would probably break Twitter, at this point, I would say Leonard Taylor in round 2 to Buffalo, as well as Chris Jenkins. So I am going to pick the player at 64 because I want him to move up. And generally, when I'm picking players to move up, I'm going as far back in the draft card, as far low as I can, before I would move a player up. I would rather move a player up a lot than try to move a player up like one spot. Okay. So again, you look at the top of Buffalo's draft card, I believe I have picked every single one of these players at least once in the first round. I've grabbed Arnold in the first round, and I would take Arnold over Trotter. Okay. So again, this is the last iteration. So Arnold is 9, Trotter is 8. I am taking Arnold. And then what wide receivers would Buffalo look at in round 2? So Egbuka in round 2, he is 62nd on the draft card. He needs to move higher than that. So we go and we do that second round challenge. Okay. That was 10 unique second round picks. Egbuka could be to Buffalo in round 1. But I think round 2 is better value for him. And if we look at the team needs, and we look at Buffalo's draft card, so Kool-Aid McKinstry was a player that we took last time, and with one of the first round picks. He is the number one player on Buffalo's draft card. If you look here, Arnold and Wiggins were players that we've also taken. All you moved up. He was outside of the top 10, I think, at the time I picked him. You see Neighbors, you see Worthy, you see Newton versus another player I picked. O'Dunes was another player I picked. But in this case, I've done a pretty good job on Buffalo's draft card. Okay. That doesn't mean that this is the big board, but you can't, like, you have to do enough mock drafts to make this board behave the way that you want. So the purpose of this is for me to show you how to use some of the utilities on the site to build a draft card the way you want it. Okay, so let's go back, and one of the other positions I have to deal with is running back. So I have to make sure that the running backs on Buffalo's board are accurate. So I am going to pick Buffalo. I'm going to do a second round challenge again. Okay. There are no running backs I would take in round one. So everything I do in round one is more about working on the top part of the draft card. For example, I don't want Trotter in the top 8. He should be a high linebacker. He should probably be one of the highest linebackers on Buffalo's board, but he should not have a first round grade. So Turner and Kitchens should both be higher than Trotter. Stutzman should be higher than Trotter. King and Trotter are both second round picks. Van Pran would be a second round pick. Trice might go in round 1. I like where Mondin is. He doesn't need to move up. But we could do Johnny Wilson in round 1, right? So that's a possibility. We could do Chop Robinson in round 1. And we could do Keon Coleman in round 1. We could even do Troy Franklin in round 1. So Franklin is 39th. He is the furthest player down, but he is more likely to go in round 1 than be available at round 2. So I'm going to draft Franklin. He is 39th. And then keeping in mind, my goal at this point was to work on the running backs, make sure the running backs are at the right spot of the draft card. So I'm going to look at running backs here. Okay. Trevion Henderson and Braylon Allen are two names to get used to when we're dealing with running backs. There are definitely a few others on this list that we're going to be talking about, but I'm going to take Allen, who is 51 right now. Okay. Notice where Franklin went, right? He was in the 30s, and now he's all the way up to 6th. Okay. Latham is an offensive tackle, as well as Wilson are both first-round picks. Keon Coleman is also likely a first-round pick, as is Chop Robinson. So again, I'm going to take the player that's furthest from the top and pick him first. Okay. Now notice Stutzman is sitting right there at the top of the draft card. If he's there in round 2, that's a great pick for Buffalo. Okay. So while you can comment about we've drafted whatever number of linebackers in the last 2 seasons, this is a probable first round grade that Buffalo's getting halfway through round 2. Okay. So Keon Coleman was a player I took last time. He's all the way up to 5th. Okay. So if we look at the top of the draft card, I really like it. So again, King is a second round pick. And we're working on running backs here. So Blake Corum would be a running back that should be pretty high on the list. So I am going to take him in the second round challenge. And I may have actually just taken Corum. I think I just took Corum in round 1. So Corum just moved up way more than he needed to. Let's look at who the wide receivers are here. Egbuka at 62. Again, would be a great second-round pick. Okay, so Corum moved up really high. I won't need to pick him again, but let's talk about working the draft card here a little bit. So Wilson at 32 is a player I want to move up. Okay, so I see no first-round grades on board 4, so I go back to 3. Latham is a possible first-round candidate for Buffalo. So I will put Latham as the round 1 pick. And then the round 2 pick, let's look at the running backs again. So Corum has definitely moved up high enough. I'm not going to pick Corum again. I don't need his value to move up anymore. Marks would be a possible running back to consider in rounds 3 or 4. Devin Neal definitely needs to be higher. So he's 158 right now. I'm taking him. Okay. So I want Coleman, Arnold, and Franklin higher than Corum. So I am going to take Coleman again. It's a second-round challenge, so you can do whatever you want in the first round. The second round must be unique. And another one, Marshawn Lloyd. He's probably going to be taken before the end of round 4. So I'm going to take him in the second-round challenge. He's 252 on the draft card right now. I'm drafting him to move him up. So the purpose of a second-round challenge is you're essentially saying I like player A in round 1, player B in round 2, and that round 2 pick has to be unique so you can work on that part of your team's draft card. So you can see I've taken Coleman, Wiggins, Latham. I haven't taken Newton in round 1, but he's still sitting there pretty high up on the card, and I like where he is. Neighbors, okay. I want to take a player that's under Corum, and I'm going to take Troy Franklin. So does Franklin go higher from 10 to 9? Okay. Jonathan Brooks, Will Shipley, Esteen. Those are all running backs that you would want to consider somewhere between rounds 2 and 4. So again, I'm going to stick with the spirit and take the player that's ranked lowest. So you can see Corum at this point has already fallen to 19. So I was able to get him, let's say, what I call like off the first page. He's not being displayed here. He is not in the top 8 of Buffalo's picks. I like all those players in round 1 for Buffalo, except Trotter. So Latu, O'Duns, Turner, Arnold, Worthy should all have first-round grades. Wilson should have a first-round grade. Chop Robinson right here should have a first-round grade. So we're at iteration 7. I am taking Chop Robinson, taking the furthest player away and moving him up in the first round. And I believe at this point, so Benson would be a good running back for Buffalo. I haven't taken him in the second round yet, so he's available here. So I'm going to take Robinson. There's a good chance that he's the last running back that I would take. So now we're back to round 1. You can see Chop Robinson, who I just took. He went from 30-something all the way to 5 on Buffalo's draft card. Okay. I like DeJean over Trotter. I also like Trice over Trotter. So I am going to take Trice, who is 42nd on the draft card, picking a player that's further away and moving him up. So generally speaking, if you see a player where you don't like where they are in the draft card, take the player that you like over the other who is furthest away from that spot on the draft card. Okay. So at this point, Jenkins should probably be higher than any of those others, as should Thomas. Now, if I take Thomas here, I can't take him in round 1. Okay. So I am going to take Thomas because I like that pick in this specific spot. I also see Travion Henderson, who is just on the outside of the top 8. So I like where he is on the draft card, even though I haven't taken him yet. So I'm going to take Thomas, but that prevents me from taking him in the first round because once he's taken in the second round, he's not available for any of the other iterations. Okay. So we see Corum and Trotter here. O'Dunn's should definitely be higher than both of them, so I'm going to draft O'Dunn's. And then Jenkins would be another defensive lineman that I would definitely consider in round 2. Okay, so now this is my last time through, right? So this is iteration 10. So you can see that I've worked on the top of the card. I am going to take Neighbors. He should be higher than he is relative to a few of the players above him. So I'm definitely going to take Neighbors. A couple of other tips on doing a second round challenge. Save your best picks for last, unless you're planning on picking the same player in the first round 10 straight times. I don't believe I have taken Neighbors in this second round challenge. And notice again, I took Trice in round 1. If he's sitting there to Buffalo in round 2, that's a really good pick, right? So that means he's sitting at the right spot of the board for him to be at the top of the draft card there. Okay. And that's an example second round challenge. So at this point, you've seen me do a single first round challenge for DBs. You saw me do a second round challenge for running backs. You saw me do a second round challenge for linebackers. And that was just to work specific position groups onto the draft card. So what if we take the position groups out of it and just do either a second round or a third round challenge? So this time we'll do a third round challenge for Buffalo. And the purpose of doing a third round challenge is it's going to give you the ability to work on the top end of Buffalo's draft card. You have to do 15 unique third round picks. So I'm going to have to go through everything you just saw me do. I have to go through 15 times. Round 1, I can repeat. Round 2, I can repeat, but round 3 has to be unique. Okay, so I'm doing a third round challenge. And it would be good in my head if I had, let's say, 10 players that I want Buffalo to target in round 1. And 5 of those 10 I'm going to get to pick twice. And those 5 out of 10 that I pick twice will probably be the ones that are at the top of the card when all is said and done. Okay. So if we look here, like I like everything that's at the top 9 of the draft card. The order might be a little bit off, but I would not be upset if Buffalo took any of those top 9. I definitely would not want them to take Blake Corum. So I ask myself, who is after number 10 that I want more than Blake Corum? And there's a lot. Latu, Worthy, Verse, Kitchen. So I'm going to take Latu, and let me see if there's anybody on page 3. Okay, I'm going to take Wilson because I like Wilson in round 1. So taking Wilson. So it went wide receiver in round 1. Round 2, it's a good defensive line round. So Jenkins, Smith, Jackson are all players I would consider in round 2 because Jackson is the furthest down. He is the first one that I'm going to take. Okay. This third round pick has to be unique. Okay. So, meaning once I take the player in round 3, he won't appear in any of the subsequent iterations. So at this point, I've gone wide receiver, defensive line. The likelihood Buffalo would take a corner or a safety would be high. Okay. So in this case, I will take Rod Moore, 107th overall on the draft card. Okay, we won't see Rod Moore again because that was the third round pick, which has to be unique. So now we're back to round 1. So Wilson, who I just picked, has already moved up to number 5. But again, I'm focused more on Trotter and Corum and say who underneath them would I take in round 1. I would take Igbokwe in round 1 over those guys. So I'm going to take Igbokwe. Okay, I took Jackson last time as defensive lineman. And he's still sitting there. I'm not going to take him again, though. I'm going to take Jenkins. So at this point, I've gone wide receiver, defensive line. Okay, notice Stutzman. He fell to round 3. He's at the right spot of the draft card. So this is where it's BPA. You definitely take him there. You can argue with me all you want about Buffalo shouldn't take a linebacker in the 3rd round for 3 straight years, but you got to take a look at that Stutzman kid. He's going to be pretty good. Okay. So again, I'm looking here. I like what that first page looks like. Corum and Trotter, those are definitely 2nd round grades. Arnold, Kitchens, DeJean, Turner all need to move up. So I am going to take Turner. Okay, so this is Buffalo's 2nd round pick. Okay. If Wilson is there, if any of these 3 wide receivers are there in round 2, Bills Mafia is going to be screaming. So in this case, I take the top player. He's at the right spot of the draft card. I like him there. Wilson will still appear in other iterations. This is a 3rd round challenge. That was a 2nd round pick. Okay. These are what the corners and safeties look like. I am going to take Maliki Moore. Okay, I like the top of the card. I really like the way that looks. Corum and Trotter are right there. So I could take Arnold, Newton, Trice, DeJean. So let's take DeJean. He's the furthest away. Okay, this is a 2nd round pick. I like Trice in round 2. I also like Dorless in round 2. I like JT in round 2. JT is the furthest away from being at the top of the card. That would be like a really good value pick. So that's why I picked him there. Okay, and now 3rd round, I like Jamari Thrash as well as Dorian Singer in round 3. Okay, so again, I'm looking at the draft card here. I like the way that looks. Okay, Brock Bowers at 27. So I know we picked Kincaid last year, but Brock Bowers shouldn't be 27th on the draft card. He needs to be way higher. So I pick him there. Okay, if Worthy is there in round 2, you sprint to the podium. And the fact that I can take the top player on the draft card in round 2 is telling me that Buffalo's draft card is set up effectively, because I'm very often taking the top player. So here's Landon Jackson. I've taken him once already in the 2nd round, but I tell you, if he's sitting there in the 3rd round, folks, that's going to be a good player. He can do a little bit of edge, a little bit of free technique. So he has some position versatility on the defensive line. Okay, so again, I see Corum at 9. Newton is 10. So Newton's a candidate here. Kitchens, Worthy, Coleman, Trice, Chop Robinson, Jared Verse, Latou, Troy Franklin. I like all those guys in round 1. So unless there's somebody here that should be taken in round 1 or here. So JT could be a possible round 1, as could Brian Thomas. So I am going to take Brian Thomas in round 1. He is the furthest player away, so I wanted him to move up. Okay, I don't like Corum at the top of the card in round 2. I do like Trice. And notice the difference of 20 to 15. So there's going to be a lot of times people have to pick Trice before he moves higher than Corum in round 2. Okay, now we are in round 3. I'm taking wide receiver edge. I like Stackhouse in round 3. I like Mekhi Wingo too. Mekhi Wingo in round 3. Okay, so Trotter is 8. Anybody on page 3 that I like in round 1? Nope. Verify there's nobody on page 4 that I like in round 1. Mims might be round 1. Maybe. So I'm going to take him. We have to go through 15 unique 3rd rounds. We've only done 7 of the 15. So Trice is already higher than Corum, so I'm good there. Who else? I like Dorless. I like Leonard Taylor. I like Barton. I like Jenkins. I like Mason Smith. All in round 2. Okay, so I'm going to take Mason Smith here. You do not have to do all of the challenges. You see me do 1 first-round challenge, 2 second-round challenges, and this is a 3rd-round challenge. If you like only doing first-round challenges, you could manipulate this so you do the 3rd-round players first, do the 2nd-round players second, do the 1st-round players 3rd, and you might be able to do some of this just by doing back-to-back-to-back first-round challenges. Okay, so Stackhouse in round 3 would be a good pick. I like all the players at the top. Okay. I want Arnold higher than Corum, so I'm going to pick Arnold here. He should be under consideration for round 1. I like Leonard Taylor in round 2. I haven't done wide receiver yet. So I like Singer in round 3. Okay, so notice Arnold moved all the way up to number 1 there. So I see a group of players that all should move higher than Trotter. So I'm going to pick Coleman. Okay. So I'm looking for the second round pick. And I'm just scrolling deep into the card to see if a player who should be in round 2 has dropped. But this looks pretty good. I am going to take Chris Jenkins. So we did Coleman, Jenkins. What DBs or offensive linemen should we consider in round 3? You can see, for example, a couple of the linebackers that we picked in the second round challenge are floating just outside the top 8. So the algorithm in NFL Draft Fanatics looks at the top 8. So I really like how Jacobs and Dumas Johnson moved up. Devin Neal moved up. We're not taking them in round 3, but if they're sitting there in round 4, those will be really good picks. You can see Lloyd, you can see Luufu, you can see Bethune. If any of those players are sitting there in round 4, those are going to be incredibly good picks. Colson was another linebacker I took. So I am going to take Ines Smith, this wide receiver, worthy of a third round pick. Okay, so at this point, I'm at iteration 10. So I want to make these the best 5 first round picks that I can. You can see where Corum and Trotter are. I definitely like Johnny Wilson, or actually even O'Dunn's would be somebody that I would want over those other players. Second round, I like Leonard Taylor. Let's look at cornerback and safety. I like Catalan from actually, and let's look at guard and center. Okay, I like Zach Frazier in round 3. As you can see, O'Dunn's moved all the way up to number 1 on the draft card. I like Jared Verse in round 1. I like Worthy in round 1. So let's take Worthy. Igbuka's sitting there in round 2. Would Buffalo go back-to-back wide receivers? I'm half tempted to pick Igbuka just to say that that would be true. Mason Smith again in round 2. He needs to be a little bit higher. And I like both the Baylor defensive lineman as well as the Washington edge in round 3. I like Newton in round 1 for Buffalo. We have 3 more of these left. I want Igbuka over Corum, so I'm definitely taking Igbuka there. So now we're in iteration 13. So we have 13, 14, and 15 left. You can see Newton, who I just picked, moved up to the top of the card. Take Neighbors. Lassiter in round 2 would be a really good pick for Buffalo. And I really like the way that 4th round board is stacking up, right? With the running backs and the linebackers sitting there. So Cowing would be a reasonable pick in round 3. Kitchens would be another really good pick for Buffalo in round 1. Get ourselves a new true free safety. Take the defensive lineman. So one of the things to think about is that it's important to have the draft card, I don't want to say accurate, but effectively implemented. You want the draft card effectively implemented because Buffalo right now in the current draft order is 13th, but they could go from 13th to 32nd, with a 6-game win streak. So from that standpoint, if the players are in the right order, even if different players are available, the draft card being in the right order will serve them well, for mock drafts that are done actually after the season ends. Okay, so this is my last one. Okay, so at this point, we're in iteration 15. I'm looking at the draft card and I'm moderately impressed with who is in the top 8. And I am going to take Dallas Turner. With the last first-round picks, we went edge. Then for the second round, I'm probably going to be looking at either interior line, defensive back, or wide receiver. So I want to look at DB. Lassiter's still there. That's a good pick. I didn't even look at the wide receivers, but let's see what's there in round 3 at wide receiver and interior offensive line. Waiting. I like Horton in round 3. Just like that, I'm done. And while that third round challenge took a little bit more time, you can see towards the end of it, I was able to start shifting the players to the part of the draft card where, okay, so if we're in round 2, is it showing me the right set of players for round 2 based on either who fell out of the first round or what the positional needs are? Did I have that right set up for the Buffalo Bills? So with that, I am going to close this podcast. I appreciate you watching, learning. If you have questions, please tweet me at NFL Draft Fanatic, and there's no I in Fanatic. My name is Jim Wickens. I am the founder of NFLDraftFanatics.com, and I appreciate you watching how to use the simulator to set up a Buffalo Bills draft card. Thank you very much.